WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany, often reviewing rare and exotic whiskeys. I'm not really sure how rare and exotic these are. We have from Benromach. Owners are Gordon MacPhail, since 1993, one of the first independently owned whiskey distilleries from a independent bottler in all of Scotland. The Contrast series, now usually they're peat smoke or organic, but now we have the kiln dried and the air dried virgin oak casks. Now, I think this is a geeky, great experiment. Couple little things beforehand. Both of these are 46%, just like we want it. I would love to have somewhere on the label, which I haven't found, maybe I'm blind, the words non-chilled filtered. Most of the products from Benromach are 43%. We love the 46%, so hey, we want the non-chilled filtered, natural color. You're doing it right anyways. Now, Benromach, when you go to the website, they say there's 4 ingredients for good whiskey. There's the barley, there's the water, the yeast, and the human touch. And what are we talking about here? Wood. There is no whiskey without wood oak casks in Scotland. So there's 5 ingredients for good whiskey. We have great barley, great water, the best yeast, the best casks, and then the human touch. And if you did that, I would be happy. Especially since you yourself, as Benromach Distillery, want to contrast and want to highlight the wood. Now, imagine you have a white oak tree. It's grown for 80 years, maybe 100 years. You take your chainsaw, you felled the tree, and then you cut it up into segments. Let's say they're going to be about, you're going to put them onto a truck to take them to the sawmill. So I'm converting your metric into feet for you at this moment. Let's say they're going to be 15 to 18 feet long. Come to the sawmill, they look at the tree, and they look and say, okay, this can be perfect barrel material. And they'll cut off then segments, maybe about 3 feet, whatever long, cut it off, and then they'll do a quarter cut. So now if you look at the grain of wood, you don't want it to be horizontal, because actually the strength of the casks, of the staves in particular, is not as high as it could be. You don't want it running the grain horizontal either. You want it to be diagonal. And how do you get that diagonal grain in there? You do a quarter cut. So you don't get the most wood out of a tree, but you get the best wood for the staves that you need. And there are actually just stave mills between, I'm going to say, Tennessee and Missouri down to maybe even Alabama. I know Jack Daniels has a few. International Stave Company has a few. I think Kelvin Cooperage has a couple. Those people who make a lot of casks in America, before you can make a cask, you need to have the staves, and you need to cut the wood. Now, the tree, when you cut it, has about 60% liquid water content. Now, you want to get that down to, I'm going to say, around 10% or lower. So as a woodworker, we used to have 6 to 8%. We would actually have a device. You touch it, it put an electric current through there and tell you what the water content of the wood was, and we always wanted about 6 to 8%. And you can do that by actually leaving these staves outside, either with a roof on top of it, or actually allow the rain and the weathers to hit that. Just like firewood, you cut down the tree, maybe you just put the logs there, maybe you split them a little bit, maybe you split them into what you want as firewood, and then you just leave them outside for the water content to naturally evaporate. And that's what happened here with our air dried oak. 3 years of air drying of those staves before they actually made a barrel out of them. Now, this is not the perfect example here, but I'm a little bit sad because over here it says kiln dried. A kiln is an oven. You heat it up just like your oven at home. You put your turkey in there or your pizza. It warms it up, and you can actually dry much quicker. These staves were 2 years air dried. It doesn't say anything on the real label here about that at the beginning, and only 1 year, then it was put in the kiln. They did not leave it in the kiln for a year. All right, so we have kiln dried, but it was still air dried for 2 years. I know of cooperages that actually at the moment are a tree is cut down, it's made into the staves, it's almost put immediately in the kiln. 6 weeks later, it's actually a barrel, and it's filled with whiskey. Here we have 3 years between cutting down the tree and filling the barrel, or making the barrel. Here we still had over 2 years of air drying, and I would have loved to have had actually this tiny little the wheel that you can turn to decide on what type of tinkering, what type of tweaking you can do. I would have loved to have purely kiln dried staves, but hey, Benromach doesn't make anything bad, so that we have here 2 years air dried, then kiln 3 years air dried. What is very, very funny, normally we as whiskey geeks would say, of course the air dried is going to be better than the kiln dried. Contraire. Almost every single person who's done a review online liked the kiln dried better than the air dried. If we go to Whiskybase, the kiln dried is Whiskybase 235063. We have 85.7 points. Now that's the kiln dried. The air dried is less. It's 84.9. So 253064. 064, 063. This has 0.6% or 0.6 points less. This has 65 votes. This has 95 votes, at least by Whiskybase. I think that is interesting. I paid basically 59 euros for each of these. I see them online in 55 pounds. I see them now for 56 euros. I don't know if you have them in the States or not, but hey, they're very, very interesting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to smell them, I'm going to taste them, and each time afterwards, I'm going to read the official tasting notes from benromach.com. Now, if you have never had a Benromach single malt, go out and buy a 10-year-old. If you have a little bit more money, go out and buy a 15-year-old. You will not be disappointed if you like a lightly peated whiskey. There are 2 distilleries in the Speyside that almost only exclusively use peat. That is Benromach, 10 to 15 ppm, parts per million of phenol, of smokiness from the peat, and it's Brora, and Brora is not that old. So Benromach is doing a lot of things very, very good. One of the best distilleries out there at the moment. If I would ever go back, I'm going to go back to Scotland sometime. The next time I'm there, this is basically on my top 10 list of distilleries to visit if I'm in the right region to do so. All right, so let's start off the kiln. I'm going to just briefly go over to the air dried. Now the air dried is a little bit tighter. The kiln dried is a little bit sweeter. There's a citrus zest going on in there. There's a little bit of vanilla. And if this was blind, I would have said this is older, this is younger. They're both 2012 distilled. They're both 2023 bottled. They're both 46%. This is actually, I love this. What I don't love, and I don't understand at the moment, I'm just going to say at the moment here, is then they actually have whiskeys at the moment. It's called the Contrast Virgin Oak. What's that? It says here, limited edition single malt matured in the finest virgin oak casks for 10 years. Now, I'm trying to think, wait a second, this is Contrast Kiln Dried Virgin Oak. Sorry, Air Dried Virgin Oak. This is Kiln Dried Virgin Oak. And then you bring out a Contrast, these are from 2023, and then 2024 you bring out a Contrast Virgin Oak. And that says matured in the finest virgin American oak cask for 10 years. If I look over here, I'm going to actually see here that this says this limited release has been matured in kiln dried virgin oak barrels. Not 10 years, even though it's a 10-year-old whiskey, and it doesn't say American oak. Ooh, is there something different going on here? I really don't know. So that really kind of surprised me here to see the differences here between the air dried and the new virgin oak. So the air dried says this limited edition has been matured in air dried virgin oak barrels. Virgin oak, air dried, kiln dried. No mention of the entire 10 years and no mention of American oak. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? All right, good. On the nose, this should actually have, and they say here for the kiln dried over here. So they say here it's waves of waxy lemon peel. I talked about the lemon peel, toffee apple, sweet hay, and malt biscuit. Over here, I get a more tighter, complex moment. The smoke is a little bit more chocolatey, less lemon grind, lemon zest, and more of a vanilla caramel sweetness. So they say over here, sweet vanilla fudge. Okay, not bad. Mixed with citrus, oak, and underlying smoke. Pretty good at that. All right. So our kiln dried sláinte. There's a sweetness. I get something like grilled pineapple. Very evident here. I sometimes get that with Benromach. I get this. A little bit of a vanilla sweetness, grilled pineapple, and a sweet smoke. Officially, it should be here creamy with tropical pineapple flavors. Nailed it. Barley sugar, fresh lime, ginger, don't get that. Menthol undertones develops alongside oak. I think the Lot 40 has more menthol than this, but there's a little bit of that moment there. All right, let's go over to the air dried. Cheers. The smoke is deeper. Also a little bit more of a high cacao, a dark chocolate. And a tiny little bit more of a espresso mocha moment. I must admit, I think I like the air dried better. Now, if this was the only tweak they did, the difference between 3 years air dried and 2 years air dried and then in the kiln, this is amazing what flavor this has an effect on the flavor. Did they really place it in the same warehouse in the same similar positions? Did everything else, the same yeast, the same barley, the same water, the same distillation process, of course, but everything else the same, and the only difference is kiln dried after 2 years, no kiln, entire 3 years air dried. That is crazy. And this is going to be cheaper. It's going to be cheaper to actually get the wood off the yard after 2 years, just put it in the kiln real quick, than the 3-year air dried there. That's a long time. All right, so here I should be getting cracked black pepper, which I don't get, followed by citrus, toasted cereal, fresh garden mint, and oak flavors. Okay, I had a tiny little bit of a moment of almost like a after 8 moment of peppermint patty, and that's that peppermint going on in there. I like this better. Okay. If you have not compared these two, I must admit, every nerd, whiskey nerd heart, every geeky personality in the whiskey community should have done this in their life already. I think this is so cool. Now, I am not a peat head, but I think the 15 to 10%, or sorry, 10 to 15 ppm peat phenol content of Benromach is absolutely not just acceptable, but in itself absolutely yummy. I'm not a big fan of Octomore and so other Lafroig and Lagavulin and Kilroman and even Port Charlotte can be off and on sometimes. But Benromach is absolute where I want to be. Think Highland Park, think Taliska, think Benromach. Those are often very nicely balanced products. And Gordon MacPhail know what they're doing. And dear Benromach, your standard core range, could you bump it up to 46% for us? And could you change your little 4-point into 5-point? Barley, water, yeast, wood, and the human touch. That would make me happy, and I think it'd be truer, much truer to reality, and then maybe we need to add time. But hey, I'd be happy just adding wood, because we all agree there is no Scotch whiskey without oak barrels. It's in the law. Thank you very much for watching, liking, subscribing. What is your favorite Benromach? Do you know anyone else that has done an experiment like this? I know International Safe Company did something. Think of the Buffalo Trace single cask experiment where they used also different casks, different woods, and actually experimented with that. That was fantastic. I wish that information and the results were more widely available to everyone so we can learn a little bit from that. But hey, I guess I just have to do a little bit more research. If someone can post a link here to show the results here from us. And I wish you a very, very good time. And don't forget, Benromach is really, really interesting. One of the best distilleries out there in all of Scotland. Bye-bye.